I'm going to be very short here. I'm just getting everybody's attention. I'm going to hand the mic over to our CEO, Mehul Sangani, who's going to get the party started.
First of all, I'm going to keep my comments right now really brief, but I wanted to thank everyone for being here today. Today is a momentous day, not just for Octo, but what we think is a stake in the ground, not just here in the community, but for innovation in our ecosystem. But without further ado, I wanted to quickly introduce, I have the privilege of introducing and welcoming, our keynote guest here today, the 69th Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and our Senior Senator, United States Senator from the state of Virginia, the Honorable Senator Mark Warner.
Well, thank you, Mehul. Thank you for that introduction. You guys were both so brief. Does that mean I get to give you the whole senator's speech? Let me first of all thank Mehul, congratulate you, triple hokey. How many here Virginia Tech connected? Okay, good. Do you know why I am the most famous governor ever?
Got us in the ACC.
Got us at Hokies in the ACC. That used to be a big thing. When I was governor, I'd go down through Southwest Virginia and people come up to me and go, "You're the blankety blank Democrat, but I'm going to still vote for you because you got the Hokies into the ACC." So something's still going. I mean, today's a good day for me, good day obviously for Octo, and we're going to cut the ribbon here at oLabs in a moment. I was just a little bit earlier at Interos over in Arlington, where they are doing supply chain mapping, something very important. Mehul and I were talking about the fact that we really do think the entrepreneurial ecosystem that some of us have been working on literally for, I think I first started back in the 80s, so how old I am, but for 20, 30 years, has made great strides. A lot of the innovation that's going on in our country isn't all happening out in the valley. A whole lot of it is happening right here in the DMV, and particularly emphasize the V part of the DMV. I think we've had some great wins. I mean, I was really happy that after a year of work, we got Boeing to announce they're bringing their corporate headquarters here. That coming on top of Amazon, coming on top of Nestle's, coming on top of Northrop Grumman. The list goes on and on. And one of the things I think you guys also realize is that there's a key startup and mid-sized company ecosystem as well. And really appreciate all that Octo does in terms of helping our federal government. And Lord knows we need help. They'll ask me, what was I thinking about these days as chairman of the Intelligence Committee? These are enormously challenging times. I think most of us have been enormously, I hope we all have been enormously moved by the courage of the Ukrainian people, President Zelensky's leadership, the fact that even though there was a bump in the road or two, we did stand up in a broadly bipartisan way and try to make sure that we get the Ukrainians the arms they need to take on Russia. When you actually add up this package plus the previous package, combine that with our European friends, finally, we've kind of gotten off their duffs and chipping in as well. We're at about $50 billion of aid to Ukraine since the beginning of the year. When you take that vis-a-vis the overall Russian defense budget at only $66 billion, we've now given the Ukrainians the tools they need to compete. And what I think is most powerful, and I hope that we all, again, regardless of where we fall on the political spectrum in this country, I hope we always take a moment and reflect. The last couple of years have been hard in this country. Where I work is pretty dysfunctional. I was on the floor of the Senate January 6th when something happened that I never thought I'd see. People trying to overthrow a duly elected government in our country. We had COVID, and I think there were probably some of us over the last few years have wondered, will that notion of liberal democracy, what we have, right of a free press, right to agree to disagree, right to have your votes counted, will that system succeed? And what I think is so important about what's happening in Ukraine and Russia is literally the people of Ukraine are voting with their lives to say, we so want what you have and take for granted in America every day. And I think that sends a very powerful message. For me, at least, it should clear up any of the kind of moral ambiguity about who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. I mean, Russia clearly is acting with a level of aggression that is unprecedented. And I believe we need to do all we can to make sure that our Ukrainian friends are successful. And to have the fact that we now have a united Europe, the fact that Finland and Sweden are trying to join NATO, the fact that the Swiss, when the Swiss decide to take sides, you know you got a pretty clear challenge. And while that is the immediate focus, what I'm most interested in, and have been for some time, which is I think where the real contest lies going forward, and why what is so important that Octo does, particularly as it helps in our IC community, and that is the challenge with China. And let me be clear, when I mention China, I think it's terribly important policymakers. If you ever talk about China, you got to make clear, at least in my mind, our beef is with the Communist Party of China. It's with Xi Jinping. It is not with the Chinese people. It is not with the Chinese diaspora. It is not a smokescreen, the way some political figures do, to practice hate or bigotry against the enormous contributions that Chinese Americans make to our country and the Chinese diaspora makes to countries all over the world. But we are facing in China a challenge unlike anything we've seen in the past. I grew up, I'm old enough to remember the whole challenges with the Soviet Union. The Soviets, the Russians, they were a military challenge, an ideological challenge, but they were never really an economic challenge. I mean, the size of the Russian economy is smaller than Texas. Some of you guys know my background was as a VC, and prior to that I was in the wireless business. What kind of was the wake-up call for me was when we saw what China had done with Huawei and in 5G. Or suddenly, an area where, like in so many technology areas, post-Sputnik and ways, we invented most of the next levels of technological innovation. And even if we didn't invent, we in this country got to set the rules, the standards, the protocols, and procedures. And I think we kind of fell asleep at the switch into the 90s, early 2000s. There wasn't really another great nation threat. We obviously had enormous threats around counterterrorism, but it was not an economic and technological challenge the way China presents. 5G was the first time where not only you had a national security threat in Huawei, but you also had the CCP basically writing the rules of a cutting-edge technology. And we are slowly starting to wake up to that challenge. I think we saw it during COVID when we realized how many of our supply chains, we had very little ability to oversee that supply chain, why some of the work at Interos in terms of going upstream is so important. It's why we need to have in America the kind of discipline that China has put forward of identifying key technologies where we will make the investments in the way we did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and frankly, it fell off a little bit. Right now, there is a bipartisan effort that we are this close, and in Congress this close can mean still another few weeks, of making the first kind of significant investment in a technology area around semiconductors, $52 billion, in terms of the CHIPS bill, to make sure that we continue to build fabrication facilities here in this country, that we make the next generation investment in 5G and beyond, open radio access network. I don't want to nerd out for all of you, for non-tech telecom guys, but my sense is that kind of bipartisan investment we're going to have to make, not just in semiconductors or in 5G, but in AI, in quantum, in synthetic biology, area by area. And one of the things that I've been working on a lot is, one, how do we, as a government, and I know Octo does mostly work helping folks in government, and clearly the help to the Intel community is very, very valuable. But one of the things that we've got to get our stuff together, maybe a more politically correct way to say on film, you ask China, they will outline the 5 or 6 or 7 key technologies that they see where they want to dominate. You ask the US government, you get one list from the CIA, you get another list from the ODNI, you get a third list from Commerce, you get a fourth list from OSTP, and we don't even have a consensus on where we ought to be in the game. And one of the things that I hope to try to spend a lot of time working on has nothing to do, again, left, right, or Democrat, Republican. How do we put together the capital stack in a way that on a public sector and private sector basis, we invest in the kind of cutting edge technology you guys have here. I mean, one of the things I'm so excited about when we cut the ribbon in a moment with oLabs is the fact that here you've got a mid-sized government contractor inviting in other companies to work side by side so that we can do that joint innovation. That is a very, very cool concept. And what I want to try to do is take the things at the federal level, though, the DARPAs, ARPAs, InQtels, DIUs, put them together, figure out where we can add additional funding in the capital stack to make sure that successful entities like yours, who grew from small to mid-size, can grow to the next level, that it doesn't take, if you're a new, innovative government technology enterprise, it doesn't take you 5 years and $1 gazillion of lobbyists to actually get into the procurement chain. That still is way too hard and way too complicated, because I think the kind of innovation that you are demonstrating here and oLabs will present to the government community is critically, critically important. I hope you'll count me as an ally so that we can see a lot more of this taking place. And final comment I'd make is just that, I go back again to where I started, which is these are challenging times. But I don't think when you look at the courage of the Ukrainian people at any moment in time that we ought to forget. The fact is, we live in the greatest country in the world. With all our flaws, we have the best system. It is worth fighting for. It is worth defending. It is worth making sure that we bring the innovation to the rest of the world in the kind of work that you guys all here do day in and day out. Thank you all very much, and thanks for having me. And that was the short version.
Thank you very much, Senator. Really appreciate the words. Everybody else will be twice as long. So we've got a great group of speakers here for you today. We're going to keep it short. I've asked everybody to keep it very short so we can get inside and see what's going on in there. But kind of piggybacking on your words, Senator, we have an industry partner with us. We also have a woman who will go first, who is the former Chief Technology Officer at the Directorate of Operations at the CIA. So really encouraged to hear some of the stories that she's going to share with us. I'd like to invite Cynthia Sadie out to speak with us now.
Thank you, Ethan, for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all today. And let me tell you how this story started. Rob called me and said, would you mind speaking at this grand opening event? And the first thing that went through my mind was, absolutely not. And I'll tell you why, and it's not because, I know there are rumors here today that because I'm from UVA, I didn't want to speak as CEO, so. No, it's actually because I spent my 27 years at CIA in the Directorate of Operations, and so, being out in front, when I'm accustomed to working in the background, in the gray area, meeting assets on the street, not speaking and making public remarks with cameras. So this is really exciting. It's something new for me. But my second reaction was absolutely, because when I was at CIA, this was precisely the type of entity we were trying to build, right? That idea of having the warfighter, the analyst, the ops officer, together working side by side, iterating very quickly on government solutions, or solutions to government problems, that's what we needed, not working in silos. And so that's why I'm joining you all today. So I'm gonna keep it short. I had prepared my remarks, but there we go. This means a lot to me, like I was saying, because I was an ops officer on the street, meeting assets, like many probably in this audience, at the tip of the spear. So we know what it's like when the tools that we need are not available. We know what it feels like when we see the strategic advantage slipping from us. And so, I walk into the agency 27 years ago, it's no more now, and we are mitigating the risks of the physical world on the conduct of espionage. By the time that I left, we were trying to mitigate the risks of emerging technology and trying to figure out how to leverage it for our own benefits, especially the explosion of data. So a lab like this, poised to support the national security missions, is so important. And there are three things, and this part I will read because it's a quote. There are three things that I think are critical coming, as we look to the ribbon cutting. One is, we are all travelers, none go alone, and I think that this lab really speaks to that. The government will not solve its problems by itself. We need that shared wisdom that comes with working with our private partners. So private-public partnership is exceptionally important, and Octo is really well poised to be bringing everybody together in this collaborative space to solve the nation's biggest national security problems. The second thing is AI and machine learning, more than any other emerging technologies, have the potential to change the balance of power internationally. And it is critical for the United States to stay ahead of its adversaries in this space, and a lab like this that brings together the best minds in private and public is exactly where that kind of competition is going to happen. And the last thing I'll say is speed is of the essence. It is absolutely critical for us to derive meaning from this data that has outpaced humans' ability to make sense of it. It is critical to get that insight into the hands of the warfighter and the analyst, and yes, also the operations officer on the street. And that's why I'm so excited about the ribbon cutting and about getting inside there and taking a look at the lab. There are so many ways for oLabs to make a difference, and the opportunities are limitless, and I'm really excited for what this will bring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. So, Senator, you talked about partnerships, and we've got one of our industry partners here with us today from NVIDIA, Anthony Robbins, our Vice President of Federal. He's been a great partner to us, and I think some of that comes from the amount of hardware that's inside the lab. But we do think that NVIDIA has been a true friend of ours, and we're happy to have him here speaking to you, and I'll let you take it over now.
Thank you. So I didn't go to UVA, probably because I couldn't have gotten in. I have no association to Virginia Tech. However, I have had 2 kids that went through Florida State. That's at least the ACC. So, sir, does that count? Does that count, or does that make it worse? But I am sincerely proud of the work that you're doing relative to the technology business here in Virginia. For more than 30 years, I've been going out to the Bay Area representing California-based technology companies back into the public sector. And I was down in Crystal City a couple of weeks ago. What's happening here is amazing, and it's timely, and it's really important. The largest technology transformation in history is underway right now. Right? The largest technology transformation in history is underway right now. It's being driven by artificial intelligence. And at NVIDIA, we see it around the world. And I was happily employed at AT&T running their global defense business when I was called by NVIDIA, and I looked at what was happening in the marketplace, and it was just, I felt like it was for me as a chance of being called to serve, right? So the National Security Commission, their final report published in March about a year ago, talked about a readiness state of 2025. We take that very seriously. And to your point about this has got to be a public-private partnership. The government can't do it alone. We've got to get this technology into operations in the federal government as soon as we can. And it only happens with companies like Octo creating spaces like this for collaboration to occur. In the civilian agencies, you see great progress around computer vision at the United States Postal Service. One of the greatest AI projects that's been stood up over the last couple of years, it was stood up during COVID, right? During trying times at the US Postal Service, an amazing case of innovation. At the IRS, right, where they touch an important area, waste, fraud, and abuse. Hundreds of billions of dollars has spent or misspent in the area of waste, fraud, and abuse over the last several years. And what IRS is doing in the case of fraud analytics would make you guys proud as taxpayers, okay? And then in the area of cybersecurity, nobody believes that cybersecurity is going to be solved without the capability of artificial intelligence. So think about what I just said. Computer vision, waste, fraud, and abuse, cybersecurity. Some of the biggest outlays of taxpayer dollars across the federal government. And I haven't gotten to the intelligence community or the Department of Defense. Are you convinced yet? Right? It's a really big opportunity. We have to take it seriously, and it's a giant team sport. In the case of the Department of Defense, predictive analytics and maintenance for supporting the the assets have been deployed. It's been called by the Pentagon as the #1 financial challenge to a budget that's already over $720 billion, right? And all of those areas I just mentioned, artificial intelligence and machine learning, are today and tomorrow going to play a profound impact on the future technology deployment of our government. And so it's with great honor that I partner with, NVIDIA partners with Octo, and we vetted Rob, whose early vision has come true here, and I'll look forward to working with most of you. But I'm only going to work with the people who are committed to the federal government and to going at speed and pace. If you're not ready to move, then we're going to work with somebody else, okay? So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate that. I think you've found a place to move pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
So the next set of speakers are all internal. I want to introduce our CEO, Mehul Sangani, to take over the mic.
All right. Well, first off, I want to thank our esteemed guests here today. First and foremost, obviously, Cynthia, Anthony, of course, the Honorable Senator Warner for taking time out of their busy schedules to be a part of this. And I, of course, want to thank all of our employees, our customers, our partners for taking time to be here today. We've been fortunate to have built a reputation over the last decade for being a bleeding edge provider of technology to the federal government for modernizing federal missions. And we've really done that through really two things. One is that we've been able to bring a differentiated breed of talent. We've been able to cultivate a culture that attracts that type of talent that is attracted to doing and supporting that kind of mission for the federal government, that's bringing the skills that are in demand for the federal government. And then two, we've done that by partnering with our federal agency customers to deliver against their missions. And so today represents really an inflection point, a game changer, and really a signal to our customers and partners, and even our competitors. This is an open invitation, to everyone that is a part of this ecosystem to come here today, to work here today, to partner with us to deliver against the challenges that are needed to shift and continue to shift and ensure that we shift the balance of power going forward, for our nation. And make no mistake, this is an inflection point too. The infrastructure that you see here rivals any of the infrastructure that you see in the Silicon Valley when it comes to supporting artificial intelligence, machine learning problems for our federal government mission space. That brings me to an interesting segue here. Every time I hear even our customers, when they talk about innovation, they talk about bringing Silicon Valley level innovation to their mission space. And I always find it amusing. It's almost as if they feel the Silicon Valley has a monopoly on that type of innovation, a monopoly on bringing that type of speed of innovation to their challenges. And again, this particular investment, what you see here today, again, this infrastructure, represents not only a infrastructure that rivals all that, but it represents a significant investment, a deliberate investment on our part. Now, when you hear folks talk about the Silicon Valley, and the reason that it is where it is today in that mind space is because it's part of an overall ecosystem. And ecosystems require partnerships to be successful, right? The ecosystem that exists here, I talked about the fact that the DC has its own ecosystem that rivals that of the Silicon Valley. When you talk about innovations such as the internet, GPS, Siri, the mouse, all of those things emanated out of agencies like DARPA right here in our backyard. So, when it comes to partnership, in order for ecosystems to be successful, it requires partnerships at the community level. It requires partnerships with our elected officials. It requires tax dollars to be invested into that ecosystem. It requires partnerships on the part of us, the government, and technology providers here in the area. And it also requires investment on the part of our business community. It requires investment with higher education. So it will come as no surprise to the folks here that I will offer a shameless plug for my alma mater. Virginia Tech has made a significant investment in the innovation campus here in Crystal City. It's done in partnership with our elected officials. It's done in partnership with Amazon, right? And it's a stake in the ground. It is an effort on the part of higher ed to partner with the overall community and the Commonwealth to deliver the types of skills and the jobs that are necessary. I'm proud to say that we have done our part as well. Octo has been proud to be a part of an investment in a new artificial intelligence center that's going to be housed in that innovation center at Virginia Tech. And so Dr. Naren Ramakrishnan, if he doesn't mind holding up his hand, is here today. He is the director of the Sangani Center of Artificial Intelligence. And so again, that partnership at the community level between businesses, between customers, is what's required for us to ensure the balance of power, stays where it should be going forward, that we can protect, the world order that we've cultivated over the last 100 years or beyond. So again, in summary, make no mistake, okay? This is not your mother, your father's, your aunt, or uncle's government contractor. The investment here today is a statement. It's a statement to our competitors, who it's an open invitation to them to work shoulder to shoulder with us. It's an open invitation to our customers. It's an open invitation to this community. It's a statement and an investment in an overall partnership to deliver against the innovation that's needed to serve our missions going forward. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here today. We're looking forward to having you guys tour the space with us, and we'll proceed to that without further ado.
We're almost there. We're actually ahead of schedule still, believe it or not. Yeah. So we'll keep, I'm going to pass it over to Sujay Edwards, Chief Technology Officer of Octo.
Thank you, thank you. How's everybody doing today? No, y'all can do better than that. How's everybody doing today? Listen, to get this thing open and to get this thing going, it took a lot of work. And I just want to thank just a few folks before I get a couple of opening remarks. Rob, who you'll hear from in a second, for the vision and the direction and staying convicted to get this done. Ethan Merlin, who you guys have all met from a marketing perspective, organizing a lot of different things and getting that effort together. Thank you. Carl Easley, when you guys get in there, it's a nerd paradise. And so the amount of things that need to be connected, Carl Easley, thank you so much. And then my biggest fear in that space was that it was going to turn into a giant man cave. So I needed somebody that had an artistic view that could make it beautiful, make it flow, make people want to come in there. So Laura Hoffman, thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, if we didn't have our orange carpet and our facilities and all the great little bells and whistles, Josie, thank you so much for putting the event together. So we'll thank all our technology partners and everybody else later. I want to thank also the executive staff. When we started this vision, it was right before COVID, and then COVID happened, and the guys were like, do you really want to spend this much money on a facility that people are going to have to come to? And I was like, yes. So thank you guys for the support from the rest of the executive staff. And then ultimately, visions are visions until somebody pays for it. So I appreciate Arlington Capital and their partnership with us to be able to get this thing done. So again, I appreciate it. So I heard a lot of talk about the Silicon Valley and all those things. And truthfully, as a technologist, I could work anywhere in the world and I could do anything. And I think the problems that they solve in Silicon Valley are cute. Ultimately, they're selling more ads. They're, data mining your stuff so they figure out how to do different things. And I think that's important, and I think that's great. But here, inside the DMV, with an emphasis on the V, we are solving the hardest problems in the world. And ultimately, to solve problems, you need people to work together. And today, with this ribbon cutting and this facility, we have the greatest technologists in the world at Octo. You guys that are at Octo know I feel that way. We have the hardest problems in the world, as you guys all know, being inside this space. And now we have the facility and the technology to go and solve those things. So although this is a ribbon cutting and this is day one, the things that are going to be produced out of this lab, the solutions that are going to come out, and how we solve these problems are going to be absolutely amazing. So thank you guys, and with that, I will turn over the mic.
Thanks, PJ. It really was a team effort, so thanks for highlighting that. Next up is Rob Albrecht. He's a AI guy through and through, so I'll let him. He's got some good stories for everybody here to talk about, and then we'll get to the ribbon cutting.
Appreciate it. So I have a UVA story too. I don't know if you remember this, Mayhul. The first real interview I had with Mayhul up in his office here was the day after we had beaten Virginia Tech in football. I thought there was no way I was going to get the job. You can. You can probably tell we have a healthy chip on our shoulder here. We're here, right? This is oLabs. We're here, and I'm super pumped about this. So I was gonna do a lot of thanks too, but Sujay went ahead and took care of that for me. So appreciate that, Sujay. So on September 11th, I hope you guys don't mind. I'm gonna read a little bit. September 11th is a day most of us will never forget, right? 3,000 of our brothers and sisters died. The 9/11 Commission concluded that the reason for that was a failure of imagination. If you look at Pearl Harbor, in addition to 9/11, the HMS Titanic and Apollo 1, all of them were failures of imagination, due to failure of imagination. Here at oLabs, we designed this space and this organization intentionally to combat failure of imagination through our ethos. So our ethos is innovate in the gray. We have a saying here, innovate in the gray. So what does innovate in the gray mean? It means don't break the law or ethical norms, but be willing to push those boundaries as close to that boundary, as close to that line as possible to accomplish what we need to do for our government customers, right? To solve their hardest problems. So why did I join oLabs? So if we go back 2.5 years ago, the only thing Mayhul, Jay Shaw, and Sujay actually promised to me was that I would have an opportunity to pitch this idea. They didn't promise me that the lab would actually be built or that we would actually get the funding to build it, but they did promise me that opportunity, and they stood up to their word. They followed through. They allowed me to pitch this to ACP, to our board, to our stakeholders, and thank goodness, they all agreed with the idea and they let us take a shot. And so what you're gonna see here is the result of that. What you're gonna see is 15,000 square feet of space, 20 petaflops, and a lot of you have probably heard these stats, but they're freaking amazing. So 20 petaflops of AI compute, 3 petabytes-ish or more of flash storage for doing AI and data analytics type work. You're gonna see a close quarter battle facility, which allows us to actually test our AI innovation in an operationally relevant environment. If we drive a few miles west of here, we actually also have a drone facility, basically a 13-acre field where we can test drones. So we have absolutely everything we need to innovate and test our innovations in an operationally relevant way. We want to make sure that they work before we put them on the battlefield, before we put them into a warfighter's hands, before we put them on an analyst workstation or into a surgeon's hands. If we do things like looking for cancer cells using computer vision, all kinds of really innovative work here. Finally, let me leave you with this. As you walk into the lab today, if you look to the right, when you walk through these doors, you're gonna see a flag, a wooden flag. That flag is made out of wood that was taken out of lockers from 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, so Delta Force, more affectionately known by a lot of us. That flag represents a lot to us. Every single day when we walk through those doors, our engineers get to look at that flag, and it's a reminder of why we do what we do here and why we built this facility. And we'll never forget that us as individuals is not as important or as powerful as it is that mission and what we stand for. So with that, let's go in and have some drinks and see some cool technology.